Hello, and welcome to Talking Local. In this series of insightful interviews, I get together with knowledgeable and well-known local search specialists. We talk about certain topics that they know a lot about, and I'm sure many of our customers and users also want to know about. These interviews are short, but very intensive, so you can learn a lot without having to set aside hours of your day to listen to them and to watch them. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Gib Olander, who I have been speaking to for a number of weeks on various different projects. So Gib, how are you doing today?
Fantastic, Miles. Thanks for having me.
We're really delighted you can set aside the time today, Gib, so I really do appreciate that.
Right.
So for those of you who don't know who Gib Olander is, let me give him a little introduction. Over the last 10 years, Gib has established himself as a thought leader in the local search market and also in the online content management market. He's a frequent speaker at industry events such as SMX Pub Con. He's also a regular blogger on notable blogs such as Search Engine Land and MediaPost. Currently, Gib works at Sim Partners, where he is the VP, I believe, of product development. Sim Partners is a very well-known and very successful SaaS search platform that helps multi-location businesses manage their local search marketing and also their social media. I'll let Gib talk a little bit more about Sim Partners in a minute. But what I'm primarily interested in talking to Gib about today is his life before Sim Partners. Before Sim Partners, Gib worked at Localeze, which is one of the main data aggregators in the local search industry. Data aggregators are a very interesting case right now because people in our industry are very concerned about the kind of purity and the cleanness of local data. It's a big issue that many local businesses face by not having clean data out there. And one of the key sources for sorting this out is to use kind of data aggregators, which essentially take local business information and spread that out to various endpoints, and they could be local directories, review sites, mobile application, which have a sort of geo element to them. So I think this is a very keen area. I, for one, understand part of the role that aggregators play, but I don't understand the inner workings of it and why certain issues that we feel stem from aggregators are there. But hopefully Gib can shed some light on that today, and that's what we'll be exploring in the next 20 minutes. But before we get into that, Gib, could you tell us a little bit more about yourself, your background, the work you do at Sim Partners, and how you arrived at this point in your career today?
Thanks, Miles. So my background is I've been in the local search space since City Search bought Sidewalk back at MSN, the original City Guide. And in those days, we used to sell online advertising to pizza places, and we would walk down the street and have to show them how they could get online by unplugging their fax line and plugging it in and dialing up and explaining the internet to them. At that point in time, data was wrong and even worse than it is today. So it's been kind of a lifelong mission to get that straightened out and to get the ecosystem working smoothly. Prior to City Search, I worked in the Yellow Page industry, which is really the original local search application. And then throughout my career, I was at iCrossing, which did some search engine optimization. I worked at Advo, which did some database management, and then helped found Localeze with Brian Wool, Jeff Beard, and Chuck Fear and Mike Pica. And that started in about 2005. Today, I'm at Sim Partners after having my own startup, which is now part of Power Reviews in the review space. So, by the way, thanks for the wonderful review data that you guys publish at BrightLocal. I love looking through that, and it's an exciting piece of documentation and stats that you send out to everybody. So, thanks for that effort. It's an important space. Reviews are an important piece of the ecosystem. So, I appreciate BrightLocal's leading the way in that data. It's really helpful stuff. So after my own startup, there was a chance to come to work with the guys at Sim, who I'd known since my days at iCrossing. Some really smart, talented people like Adam Dorfman and John Shepke and Jay Hawkinson and Neil Mahoney, who are the partners. And they have a fantastic SaaS-based platform called Velocity that, as you mentioned, empowers kind of multi-location national brands to maximize both their exposure, visibility, and conversions in social, local search, and mobile through automation and scalability. We do that for tens of thousands of locations across the U.S. and internationally. And it's just a fantastic time. I run the product organization here to help build, to optimize the processes and tools as they work today, as well as build out the future tools so that we can really help people take advantage of this fast-growing marketplace.
Gib, thank you. So it's fascinating to kind of see how your career had started off, kind of back in the whole sort of yellow pages, moving into sort of city search. So your kind of career has evolved along a similar line of sophistication, as the local search industry has all kind of also involved in that space. So I'm sure there's many things that you have seen, and probably very few things that you haven't seen. So I think this is going to be a very insightful interview. Looking back at your time at Localeze, how would you describe, say, the role or the mission that Localeze and other data aggregators have in the industry? How do they see their kind of responsibility and position in the kind of local data market, but also in more broadly the local search market?
So it's interesting how that's evolved over time. So 2005 is when I helped start with Localeze, and in the early days there, our real goal was to be the language of local search, right? Localeze is like a play on Portuguese or different names of languages. And our original kind of mission was to be able to empower both recovery search and discovery search, which was a small paragraph in John Battelle's book, The Search. Previous to that, the only type of searches that could be done in local were recovery searches or NAP searches. When someone looked for a name, address, phone number of a business, they could recover that information out there on the web, but it was impossible to find the products and services that people offered. So at Localeze, our original premise was we want to get enhanced content into the marketplace and to start to build a distribution network so local search applications can function at a higher level than they did before. We quickly realized that the best way to get this type of content in the marketplace was to actually empower business owners to create that content for themselves, and that we could add governance, consistency, and control to the marketplace so that we could build a repository of all the local search entities that would then be used to power the local directories across the web. So again, this is back in 05 and early 06 that this idea of a geo-marketing cloud was first kind of introduced to the marketplace and has been, iterated on since. It was really interesting during the time of Localeze that the primary driver of the business is and always will be to have a complete understanding of all of the possible businesses in the United States and then eventually globally. But it was fun to watch the different eras that have evolved of using data since 05. So, I was in a fortunate spot to sit kind of at the nexus of the evolution of local search in some ways, that every different application or business that wanted to start in local search came across Localeze desks so that we could help them have an initial data set to start to build their product. So there was the era of the yellows, right? You had your yellow pages and your yellow spaces and your yellow whatevers across the marketplace, which then quickly evolved into the mapping era when Google Maps kind of first came to life, and then the in-car navigation systems became important. Kelsey Group and Peter Kraslovsky really launched kind of the vertical directories with marketplaces and talked about how important those were. So then we got the TripAdvisors and the Yelps and the specific and driver side and different types of vertical specific directories. That moved on to then the mobile space, which was first on deck. So the mobile carriers wanted data to hold on and control in a closed environment, which then morphed into the app world, which became apps. And then, with the iPhone, there was an era of, every day someone new was going to start a local search app, from Where to WhatsApp to Find and Save. I mean, there's been lots of them over the years. Finally, then it was social, where I can remember an early day at Localeze where we were putting together a deal with Facebook, Twitter, and Apple, all on the same trip out to Silicon Valley area, because they were all interested and excited to get local search involved in the platform. And now that space has really evolved to consumer brands and how they're going to use location search. But to really answer the overall question, it is the goal of Localeze and the aggregators is to provide a complete and accurate set of business listings so that all of these players in the space can answer questions for people accurately and consistently.
That's a great answer, Gib, and such excellent detail. Yeah, what I take from that is just how important local data is. The kind of breadth of types of sort of solutions and platforms that use local data and almost kind of rely on it as the sort of backbone for their offering. It spreads right through from now quite out of date, potentially outmoded, the kind of yellow page type sites, right through to kind of major social players, very kind of brand sort of centric vertical sites like TripAdvisor that have incredibly loyal audiences, to kind of mobile apps which are potentially going to be at least the future in the next few years for kind of sort of geo services. All of them need good, clean data that's fresh, that can easily be updated, and they can manage. Which I think is kind of why it's such a big focus on kind of local data right now, and in terms of kind of keeping that data kind of clean and accurate and up to date. Why then, given the importance of it and the kind of prevalence of it, do you think there is such a problem with unclean data out there? That there's so many businesses have got different sort of versions, interpretations, and inconsistencies, even in their basic NAP. What do you think is the kind of underlying reason for that inconsistency?
Well, it's an incredibly hard problem to solve. So everyone is under the assumption that there's just a daily imprint of all of the businesses in the United States or in the world that exists for someone to aggregate and to send out to people. But that's far from the truth. In the U.S. alone, depends on the publisher or your definition of a business, there's anywhere from 14 to 22 million businesses in the United States at any given time. Those business listings are compiled from more than 90 million different sources that are all fragmented pieces of data that have to be rolled up and built in real time in order to distribute and to have a complete set of database, a complete database of all the possible business listings. So the fact that none of that data exists, and that at any given moment in time a business is closing or opening or changing their name or changing their address or changing their phone number, and there is no central repository for the businesses to check into to actually make those changes. That was the vision of Localeze all along, was to become that kind of open repository that allowed businesses to in real time update and change their data. And that vision is coming true today with Infogroup and with Localeze, as well as Factual and Foursquare, and that their data compilation processes are getting quicker and more accurate every single day. And several of those aggregators are actually already moving towards pilot programs with search platforms to have real-time data delivery, or near real-time. Jared Smith, one of the original architects of the Localeze database, would argue with me if he hears this when I say real-time, because it's all near real-time as opposed to actual real-time. But not to get into engineering speak too much. So the idea of a data repository that sits and is packaged up is just it's a notion that doesn't exist in the real world. Therefore, it's a complex problem that relies on millions of data sources to build individual records and then publish those out to the search engines. At one point in time, the only source for data was yellow page directories that were actually keyed in offshoring keying facilities, and those were only published on an annual basis. So the fact that the marketplace, the only real data source that you had, was something that was published annually, created the infrastructure that they've since been iterating on today.
So 90 million different sources. I mean, that just, I guess, sort of shows clearly why this kind of problem exists. Do you think, if you were to kind of roll the years forward, say 2 years, 5 years, do you think we're going to solve this problem? And if there is going to be a likely solution, is it going to come from, say, someone like Google, who maybe starts to get that kind of sort of volume of sort of business information that they become the de facto source? Or do you see that it's going to be a kind of consolidation kind of in the marketplace? And how much is the kind of technology evolving and the pace of that technology evolving at, say, Localeze, so that having to amass that data from so many sources, they become so much better at it? Where do you think the solution is going to come from?
So solving the problem always comes down to what's the definition of solved. Is 98% accurate solved? to a lot of cases, yes, right? In a big data world, you get 80% right and you lop off the 20% of edge cases and you feel like you've got a wonderful solution. And you're actually talking about a big data problem when you get into the millions of records that are used. However, local is so difficult because it's all the edge cases that make it unique and special. So it's a big data problem solved by a series of small data problems that are the edge cases, which make it really difficult. And the threshold of correct or solved in local is a record of 1. Right? It's such a personal experience to actually get in your car and go to a business, and if it's closed or not there, the cost of a wrong record is extremely high. In the past, database marketing lists were only judged by the fact if an envelope or a direct mail piece got delivered to a business or not, and the cost of that failure is the cost of a stamp and the printing of the material. So the fact that the cost of accuracy has gotten so high has forced terrific investment by the data aggregators, Localeze, Infogroup, Factual, Foursquare, and then down the road. I believe there's almost like a Moore's law that's taking place. That, to talk about the publishing timelines, that in 05 we would publish a file, or Infogroup would publish a file kind of once or twice a year. So you would then you would send a physical disk in the mail to the search publishers that they would then download, like the in-car navigation systems work today. Within 2 years, we then got that publishing cycle down to quarterly, and then a year later, we got that down to monthly, and then 6 months after that, we got it down to once every 2 weeks, and now they're kind of in a state of they're publishing fairly frequently on a weekly basis. And that is continuing to be compressed down to where I said, like, Infogroup and even Localeze have customers beta real time kind of building and querying the data as it gets built. So long answer to a short question, but I think that's, yes, the problem will be solved. I don't think it even needs aggregation, or it will continue to get solved as new data sources enter the marketplace and more sophisticated algorithms continue to grow, and the appetite for accurate real-time data continues to grow in importance.
Great, thanks, Gib. What is it like, sort of working inside someone like Localeze or an aggregator in terms of the actual kind of syndication part of it? A lot of people talk about the longer lead times that in terms of you switch an aggregator. And obviously what people are using the kind of aggregators for is to also get into the end businesses to index by Google, so it helps to boost their kind of local search performance. But the lead times can be anywhere up to 3 months for when you put the data into the aggregator for when it actually starts to have an impact, or pops up and has some recognition within local search, so within Google's kind of local kind of algorithm. What's the kind of friction, the issues that's kind of causing those delays?
Well, one, those delays are being reduced every day. And two, it's similar to the earlier answer that I gave, that it all depends. And every publisher has their own sets of circumstances and needs. An in-car navigation system, for instance, doesn't have the ability to update in real time because and oftentimes it's not connected to anything. Someone has to actually go out and buy a disk to get that fixed. Some places have limited infrastructure. The size of the data file that's sent out is ginormous. It's a huge monster of a file that has so much rich intelligence that needs to be utilized within the indexes. There's also the desire of conflicting data sets and reconciling those. There's also the issues of, what do I do with a review that's valuable? Do I want to leave that up to my users because I'm in the review business, right? Do I want to take down that bad listing, or how do I associate that rich click history that I have, that I've developed over a business that's tied to a person's social profile, and how do I move that click history so that I can better service them to another data entity within the index? So, and there's a million other reasons and stories that are part of that. What we're finding is that they're simplifying, that they, being publishers of data, are simplifying the process in the desire to get it absolutely correct 100% of the time. And we're seeing more of a real-time acceptance of data in the marketplace today.
So looking at the kind of business models of the aggregators, they often charge businesses to add or update their listings on a kind of annual basis. They also charge the distribution partners that they syndicate to it seems like they're charging to get data in and they're charging to push data out. So it's like a pretty good business model to me, and I'm sure it's kind of fairly profitable. How do you see the likes of, say, Factual and Foursquare coming to the market that are maybe more kind of technology focused, maybe a little bit more kind of nimble? Do you see them kind of shaking up the kind of status quo and kind of challenging those incumbent three kind of aggregators? And how do you see that kind of playing out kind of longer term from a kind of business model? And also, who do you think might win out in terms of those groups?
So from a business model perspective, I'm proud of that business model, right? I'm one of the guys that helped invent that business model, and it led to a very profitable exit for us at Localeze. So I am grateful for it. On the other side, why is it fair or why does it work? And that question is, it's essentially allowing control and authorship of the data for the business owner. So it's their ability to reserve kind of what their name, address, phone number looks like and as an identity across the web. It also has subsidized the cost of the data file so that more and more search applications can be built and utilize the data. So the cost of a data file, where in the early days of Localeze were hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it prohibited much of the innovation that we've all liked to see in the local space. By adding the ability to manage and have businesses pay for that, it actually increased the distribution, which actually helped the business owners because they got their listings found in more real-time ways, which has helped lots of businesses grow. Now, again, that comes from my obviously biased opinion, as someone that has been involved in the marketplace for a long time. On the sides of Factuals and Foursquares and the free data, I like that model, and I think, again, data always wants to be free, but there is a cost of acquiring it and building it. And the difficulty becomes in the completeness equation that search applications have to be able to answer data questions, whether it's for a B2B guy that makes ball bearings in the back alleys of San Jose, or the most popular restaurant in downtown New York. It's easy for crowdsourcing to build the databases for the most popular urban areas. But it's really hard to get crowdsourcing data that keeps it current, fresh, and complete in the areas for rural areas or for unsexy kind of categories of businesses. So
dry cleaners.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Dry cleaners.
Yes, exactly. Dry cleaners are actually a really good local search space. It's interesting, but yeah, that's the right idea, right? It's more like the ball bearing salesman, right, or the guy that creates the chip inside the back of your mobile phone that nobody seems to need to find. But when you're Apple and you have a sales guy that is using his iPhone to try to make the appointment at that place, you have to have every listing. So Factual and Foursquare are going to always have trouble sourcing that data from kind of crowdsource or publicly at the same price points to make that offer free. I think they're doing wonderful jobs. I think they're doing, especially when you look at international data, that they really are paving the way to open up international data and the ability for local search applications to be global. They're doing magnificent stuff, and I'm glad and excited to see it happen. I don't know if they're going to be able to get the completeness for a long time.
Okay, great. I've just got two more questions for you, Gib. The first one is, a friend of yours is a fictional friend. A friend of yours, has a local business. He comes to you and says, "Hey, Gib, you know the local data space. You know what to do. What 3 bits of advice can you give me about managing my online listings, my online presence?" What would you say to them?
Right. Well, I'm the NAP guy, right? So you have to own your name, address, and phone number, and make sure it's as consistent and complete as possible, and that you update that data frequently. So all of the data aggregators are essentially, and the search platforms are essentially looking for a heartbeat for everything in their index. They want to see, is it vibrant, is it alive? Because getting bad data out is the most difficult thing that they have to solve. So continue to give them signals that show that your listing is accurate, consistent, and vibrant. The next thing I would say, so that would be 1. 2, I would say, add as much enhanced content and make as rich profile as you can across the ecosystem so that you can be found both for recovery searches, which is kind of NAP-driven, and discovery searches, which is more enhanced content. So have your products, have your services, have the things that are unique about you, the areas that you service. Make sure that you have photos and that you're involved in social media. Make sure that you have the ability to create consistent and scalable content so that you can be found in local search, and then utilize your name, address, phone number as a consistent anchor in the indexes to then publish that data around. And then I guess the third thing I would say is continue to read and stay abreast of the industry because it changes by the hour.
Okay, that's great. So I like the idea, the first one you mentioned there about kind of signs of life. And presumably that's why obviously there's a kind of annual sort of aspect to using something like kind of Localeze, where your kind of data, you need to keep on kind of essentially kind of topping up your kind of subscription with them. Subscription is probably not the right word. What other ways can kind of business kind of show signs of life, show that their data doesn't get changed, doesn't get kind of overridden by data from another source that they're not in control of?
I think it's important to change to use both social signals out in the marketplace to make sure that phone calls are coming in and out, phone connectivities and phone calls at your data point. These are offline things that you need to do. As far as with Localeze, I think it's important that you, or Info Group, that you send new content to them and maybe rotate that content on a seasonal or scheduled basis so that you give them new enhanced content, which allows them or gives them a reason to make sure that they publish that data and kind of move it up in their publishing schedule to the different search partners because they have something new to tell those data partners about. So I think I would look at the enhanced content, and then I would look at making sure that you've got your phone is ringing both in and out, because connectivity status is one of the signals that the data aggregators use as a confidence scoring part of their mechanism.
Okay, great. So final question for you. We talked about the kind of the evolution of the marketplace, moving from kind of yellow page type directories up until kind of mobile applications, and also kind of brands starting to make use of local data. Looking at the kind of the online, almost kind of slightly kind of old school world of kind of yellow pages and all those directories, right from Yelp at the very top, right down to the smaller kind of local and niche players. What do you think the kind of future holds for them as viable businesses and as a viable industry? What do you think the landscape will look like, say, in 2 years' time from what it does today?
So 2 years is evolutions comes and starts and fits, right? So I don't think that their business models are going to go away. I think they know, and they have always said, is that their bread and butter is their relationship with business owners and their ability to help them simplify the complexity of the ecosystem. I think that need is always going to be here. I think we're very far from a self-serve world when it comes to business listing identity management and when it comes to the ability to manage your listing data and to help encourage visibility and findability in local search. So I think they need to evolve their product. I think they need to evolve their kind of advertising and marketing strategies to continue to get users. I think Google seems to be showing less likeliness to send data to aggregators, not to aggregators, to directories. So kind of Will Scott's always approach of kind of barnacle SEO, I think is those directories are getting less traction now, so it's more incumbent on the business owner themselves to make sure they're represented correctly and have the proper data structures and data organizations to be found. And I think the yellow page publishers are in a position to help with that. But the days of trying to grow an audience in a walled garden, I think are less than they've ever been, because I think people get their information in a much more fragmented manner than ever before. We find our local business information on Twitter sometimes, or sometimes on Facebook. Sometimes it's our in-car navigation, sometimes it's our phone, sometimes it's our desktop, sometimes it's our tablet, sometimes it's an app. And the idea of building a platform or an environment that has millions and millions of eyeballs, I think is the wrong way to go about it today. So I believe it's going to be about how do you help a business or a brand with multi-location businesses like Sim does to try to find ways to get your content published at a geo-specific point on the map so that it is usable for people when they're making buying decisions.
Okay, that's great. So I think it's some great advice there for both kind of SMBs and consultants. In terms of kind of getting your data out there, it's good to be as broad as possible, so you kind of reach all those touch points that consumers are kind of utilizing. make sure it's consistent, make sure it's kind of frequently updated, show you're showing signs of life in it. So hopefully that's some pretty clear advice there. So Gib, that's the final question. Thank you very much for joining us today, for taking the time. I hope you've enjoyed it. Have you got any sort of parting words?
Yeah, one, thanks so much, Miles. I really, BrightLocal has done a wonderful job of being a nice, beacon in the industry of a place to go to find good information, and you share good information. And I really appreciate the publishing work that you've done, as well as the companies in the space. So thank you for all that work that you do. The one last kind of parting note that I would lead is that as a data guy, data rules the world, and in this case, data is the structure of your business listings and the relationships of those. And just getting it right at the surface level isn't enough. You need to have a concerted effort to understand how your name, address, phone number of each part of your business relates to the other parts, and really fix those at the index levels, as low as you can go in the ecosystem. Otherwise, any type of surface-related fixing that you do is only a short-term, expensive fix. You need to do long-term foundation building, and getting your NAP data right is where that starts.
Yeah, no, I certainly think it requires a layered approach, and something that's kind of very consistent. It's just incredibly hard work to get that done, but that shouldn't sort of perturb SMBs and consultants from doing it, because it's incredibly important. The data underpins so many services that consumers use, and those are going to be your potential customers. So the more you can get it right, the more customers you can reach, and the more they're going to ultimately kind of come through and find your business. So, Gib, thank you very much, and also thank you very much to everyone who's kind of watched this episode of Talking Local. We have a number of other interviews coming up shortly. There's also some other ones that we recently published, so please do check them out, and have a great day wherever you are. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.